Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me. I'm going to figure out how to open this chat thing so I can make sure everyone can hear me well. There's a Q&A. I believe Q&A is open. There we go. I see you guys. How's it going, everybody? Ricardo, what's going on? Congratulations again. Ricardo actually won the Volume 3 complete package for free when I was running that contest. Looks like he's coming to hang out with us, which is pretty cool. Sorry about the headphones, but if I don't use the headphones, it gets this weird feedback. All right, so it looks like people are showing up, which is great. I'm going to get started in a few. Thanks, everyone, for coming. The Q&A, again, is open, so you feel free to ask questions. I'm going to try and keep this focused, or I am going to keep this focused to family creation, so try and keep your questions along that line. So, yeah, what we're going to do today is, can everyone hear me? Yeah, it looks like you can. All right. So let me share my screen. What I want to do today is, in honor of Volume 3 launch, and as you guys know, the cart is closing tonight. If you don't know that, make sure you go pick up Volume 3 before it closes. It'll close tonight at midnight. And the reason I'm doing that is that I want to really refine Volume 3 after it goes out and release it with your feedback. So really holding hangouts like this where we can talk back and forth via surveys, simply emailing you guys, etc. So we're trying to get as much information, and whether it's add information, edit information, maybe there's something missing. And of course, if you purchase it now, not only will you be part of that creation process, but you're also going to get all the updates completely free. So a little different than the last few releases. I've released the last ones as second editions just later on, but here I wanted to spend the time to really focus on it. And so today what I wanted to do is take a few minutes. I don't think it's going to take an entire hour. I'm sorry, the questions are a little distracting here. I don't think it's going to take an entire hour, but I wanted to actually show you how simple it can be to create parametric families. And if you had the videos and you started looking at them, you can see how it's really not as complicated as it may seem in the beginning. And if you haven't seen any of the videos, I wanted to give you sort of a glimpse into what they'd be like. So we're actually going to create a family completely from scratch, and we are going to make it completely parametric, and I'm going to show you how easy it is. No more being stuck with only what's on Revit City. We don't want that. Not that all stuff on Revit City is really bad, but you don't want your designs to be limited by what you find online. You want to be able to create your custom stuff. So let me share my screen. So I'm going to share the entire screen. And there we go. Look at that infinite loop. How cool is that? Okay, so let me minimize this. I wonder if I can open the questions dialog. Hold on a second, guys. Bear with me here. Can I remove this? I wanted to be able to see your questions as I'm going along. Maybe I'll just have to check back and forth. That's all right. Cool. So we got 81 viewers in here so far. That's pretty sweet. Awesome. I wonder if okay. So looks like I can't. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have to keep checking back and forth. So let me just show you exactly what we're going to create today. So let me pull up Revit 2016. So what I want to do is show you a light fixture. And the reason I'm showing a light fixture is because I don't show it in BIM After Dark Volume 3, so I thought it'd be kind of a cool opportunity to show it. It's actually a pretty basic light fixture, but it's also pretty custom. You can see it's got this sort of lampshade. It's got these two supports here. It's a pendant light fixture. It's face-based, and it's fully parametric. If I go in a project, and I go underneath this little thing, you can see here it is here. Here's our light fixture. What we're going to do is we're going to build it completely from scratch, and then we're going to do a quick rendering while we chit-chat on Google Hangouts. And again, this is fully parametric, so if I went in here, I could change all these settings. This project happens to be in meters, which is going to drive my mind crazy, even though I like meters. But you can see all of these things will change. So if we want to change the thickness from 0.01 to 0.02, click Apply. You can see it got thicker. If we want to change the pendant length, I think I might have made that a instance parameter right there, pendant length. If I go to 1.5 and click Apply, you can see it gets deeper. So once you take the time to model this, which doesn't take as long as you might think, you can actually use it in all kinds of different locations, etc. Then we just check the questions real quick. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Looks good. Wow, that's trippy, huh? When that thing opens and just keeps going. Look at that. It's pretty cool. Okay, so we are going to start from scratch. This is the family, and you'll notice there's this funky piece behind it, which is just an extrusion. It's a face-based family. And so you might be thinking, why would I not use a ceiling-based family? Well, one of the main reasons I don't like to use ceiling-based families, especially when it comes to light fixtures, is when you're linking projects. Sometimes it doesn't, if not all the time, it doesn't see the ceiling and it doesn't work the way you want. So when you have a face-based family, you have a lot more options as far as placing the family. So how do you make a light fixture with a face-based family? Well, if I go to File, New, Family, and I go down to Light Fixtures, you'll notice there's only wall-based, ceiling-based, or just a light fixture. That kind of sucks, right? Well, all you got to do is start with a generic model face-based. So I just started with a generic model face-based. Let me go in 3D so you can see it. I have to go shaded, especially with light fixtures. We have our generic model face-based, and all you have to do is change the category. So if I go up on the top left where it says categories, I can change this to light fixtures. And what that's going to do, I can actually check the box here for light source, but I'll show you. What it's going to do is it's actually going to give you a couple more options as far as connectors and line types, but it also gives this nice little checkbox here for light source. So if I check that off and click apply, now we have a face-based family that has your light source, right? And that's all you need for a light fixture is a light source. So let me save this before I forget. Happy hour, final light. You can see I did it before just to make sure. Save. Okay, so there we go. Pretty simple, right? Let me just check the questions. Very cool. All right. I wish there was like a notification or something. That's all right. So first thing we want to do is we're going to do most of this in the elevation view. And the reason being is I'm going to actually use a bunch of revolves. Now, there's other ways you could do it. And as I'm doing it, you might be saying, oh, well, I could use an extrusion instead of revolve here. It's possible, but I'm going to sort of show you why I think the revolve is a good tool here. So we're going to go into our front elevation. But before we do that, we want to change this. This is a linear light source, right? And if you saw from that fixture before, if I go back into our final fixture, you can see it's not linear, right? That's not a linear light source. It's round. So we're just going to change the shape of our light source right off the bat so we don't forget. I'm going to select my light source. I'm going to say light source definition, and I'm going to go with round or circle. And then I also want it to be a sphere. I guess you could go down if you want, but this is kind of a neat light because it can shine up and down a little bit if you'd like. And click apply. And there we go. It's pretty big right now. We're going to change the size of it later. And now we're going to go to our front elevation. We're going to work in our front elevation quite a bit in this family. So I'm going to type SD on my keyboard so we have a nice shaded view. And I'm actually, you know what I think I'm going to do? I'm going to keep the questions behind. Hope it's not too distracting for you guys, but I'd like to make sure that I don't miss anything. I know last time I did this, I had some issues with people couldn't see certain windows, so I want to make sure I see that. That's how we're going to do the question and answers. Cool. So again, if you have any questions or anything, feel free to go in the Q&A area. So there we go. So now we're in our front elevation. So the first thing I'm going to do is draw a reference plane. We're going to draw a lot of reference planes, and we're going to test the reference planes. That's pretty much all you do in family creation is draw and test reference planes. So first I'm going to type RP on my keyboard for reference plane. I'm going to draw my reference plane across here. This is going to be the length of our pendant. So I'm just going to default it to something like 4'6". There we go. Now we're going to draw a few more reference planes. We want to draw the actual depth of our pendant. And we also want to draw a centerpiece where that light fixture is going to go. So I'm just going to copy this up. I'm going to type 1 foot, and I'm going to copy it again, and I'm going to type 1 foot. For now, we can change that at any time. So now we have 3 reference planes, and we've got our light source down here. So the first thing I want to do is I want to move this light source up to there and get it out of the way. So I'm going to type AL on my keyboard, my reference plane, and then I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to tab until I hit the light source. So there it goes. It says light source reference. So I'm going to click that, and I'm going to lock it. So now it's locked to this reference plane. So wherever this reference plane goes, that light source moves. Great. So now we're just going to apply a couple parameters to this before we start getting anything detailed. So I'm going to type DI on my keyboard. I'm actually going to tab, and I'm going to dimension the reference plane down here. So there we go. I'm going to dimension the reference plane, and then I'm going to dimension this first reference plane, which is the top of our pendant. We're also working upside down. If I go back here, it might be a little confusing. Oh, look at that. And Doug just asked. Thanks, Doug. So the reason I'm working upside down is because it's face-based, and that's just how the template's set up. I guess you could reverse it if you want, but it takes a little bit of a mind jump to realize that. But if I go into the final one, you'll see what I mean. Let me go to the final one. So the face base starts with an extrusion that represents your face. So when you bring it into a family, it can technically be any direction, or a project, sorry. So if I went in here and I said architecture component, here's that family I created. If you can see, it's actually looking all over the place, and it's turning left and right and up and down. So it really doesn't have a top or bottom or up and down. And so the default template has your face on the bottom. So you got to kind of do it in reverse. So again, if I went to the original one, you'd see. I should have named these something different, huh? There we go. So if I went here, you could see. So now we're upside down. But you get the idea. Once you understand that, it's not that difficult to build it the same way. Again, it's just because this now can go in really any direction, which is pretty cool, right? So let's go back here. And there we go. We've got it. We've got it, our upside down light. Okay. So I'm going to add a parameter to this. So I just selected the dimension, click add parameter, and I'm going to name this pendant length. And I'm going to keep it a type parameter. I think I made it an instance parameter before, because if you want to push and pull it sometimes in elevation, but we're going to make it all types for now for this particular parameter. Now I also want to click dimension, DI on my keyboard. I'm going to select these two reference planes, and I'm also going to select these two reference planes. So I hit a string of dimensions between these three, and then I'm going to do an overall dimension. So what that's going to do is if I select this string and click EQ, it's going to keep my light source in the center of whatever depth this is. So if I select the 2 feet dimension, click add parameter, and I call it fixture height. Now, whatever I do with this fixture height, so if I take this and I pull it up, you'll see this light fixture or light source actually stays centered. So that's why we EQ it. So now no matter what you do with this, it's going to stay centered. I'm going to do this back to 2 feet. Okay. So there we go. I'm going to save that before it explodes. Now there's a couple more reference planes that we're going to put, and they might not make sense until we draw geometry. So I'm going to take this bottom reference plane. I'm going to tab to it. I'm going to copy it up. I'm just going to go 3 inches. It's kind of arbitrary right now, but what that's going to be is those supports. I'm also going to dimension that. I'm going to add a parameter, and I'm going to call them shade supports. I guess we could say shade support location or something, but that's okay. So the shade support. So now whatever this does, you can see the shade support is actually moving with it. We don't want that, right? We want that shade support to stay at the 3 inches. So I'm going to make sure I lock it. So if I go to my family types, and this is why you flex families. I mean, no matter what, when you're building them, always keep flexing your families. So shade supports, I'm going to click lock there. And I'm also going to do it for fixture height, just for right now. And so now if I take this reference plane, I push and pull it, you're going to see everything's moving along with it. So this is why you want to flex. David Larson asks, is there a reason why I'm not naming reference planes? That's a great question, and it's because I'm lazy. You can name reference planes all you want. So you can select this, and right under here say name, and you can say pendant, top of pendant, or something like that. Honestly, when you build a bazillion of these and you start using so many reference planes, it can get very time consuming to do it. I know a lot of people say it's a best practice to do it. So I guess you can name them if you'd like. So that's as simple as it is. You just select your reference planes and you name them as you go along. Unless you want to sit here and watch me name all these, I'm not going to, but that's a very good point. And then Steve Hickerson asked, are these all instances or types? I'm using all instances here. I'm using all types here. This is a type of family where I think you would want to have 8-inch diameter and be able to control all of that as a type parameter. I don't think there's going to be enough variation in this to not. I'd say the only parameter I would make an instance if you wanted to would be this pendant length. And the reason being, if you're on, let's say, a sloped roof or something, you might have the exact same fixture that's going to have multiple lengths, right? Because it wants to be even or something like that. So right now, these are all instances. I guess maybe I'll make this sorry, these are all types. I guess I'll make this an instance just for the point I just made. So pendant length, I'll modify it, and I'll make it an instance. And again, the reason being, if you place it on something on an angle, and maybe we'll do it at the end, you can make the bottom of it all the same. Okay, so Hangman makes a good point as to naming reference planes. So he's saying that when you're locking stuff and you need to attach to reference planes, it's nice to name them because when you're in different views here and there, you'll see the name and you know where you're locking to the right one. So that's a good point. None of these reference planes are going to be overlapping that much to where I'm going to get confused and you'll get confused. So I guess it's still, I'm still kind of doing it for the sake of time, which is good. Okay, so great. So now we're going to set up a few more reference planes. And this is where people might scream and say, why are you doing it this way? But I actually kind of like doing it this way. I'm going to use a revolve instead of an extrusion for this. And you'll see why, and I'll explain why. So first, we're going to draw a couple reference planes vertically. So I'm going to draw a reference plane here. I'm going to select it, and I'm going to say 3 inches. And I'm going to draw another reference plane. I guess I could just copy this one. We'll copy this one. Copy this one. I'm going to go out 1/2 of an inch. Okay. So we're starting to sort of set the skeleton for this pendant here. And we're going to draw one more. We'll do that in plan. So we'll just do this pendant first. So we got these 2 reference planes here. And so now I'm going to dimension these. I'm just going to do it down here so it's kind of out of the way. And I'm going to make 2 separate dimensions because these are going to be 2 separate parameters. If you did a string here, you wouldn't be able to do the 2 separate parameters. So if I select this 3-inch dimension and I say add parameter, I'm going to call this one shade radius. Type. And I'm going to select my 1/2 inch. So because these are 2 separate dimensions, we don't want to do a string. That's why I drew 2 dimensions. And before I do that, I'm going to type UN on my keyboard, and I'm going to get rid of those damn trailing zeros. There we go. Wonderful. Okay. So let me select the 1/2 inch again, go to add parameter, say type, and then we're going to say shade thickness. Okay. So the reason I'm using a revolve here instead of an extrusion is we can control these with typical regular dimensions. If we were to do it as an extrusion in floor plan, and maybe I'll do it both ways real quick, you would have to use a radius dimension here, and then you would have to do a radius here, and you want to be able to type 1/2 inch, you'd have to do a formula or something to make it work. So here it's pretty simple. It's 1/2 inch, 3 inch, and it's going to work the exact same as the other one. There's plenty of ways to skin a cat in Revit. So I'm actually going to create my first piece of geometry now. So I'm going to say create. I'm going to do a revolve. And I'm going to first draw my access line. And with my access line, I'm going to just pick lines, and I'm going to select lock here. Because I want this to always stay locked to this center reference plane. And then I just pick the center reference plane. And now I'm going to select boundary lines. I'm going to use a rectangle to save some time. And when I draw my rectangle between these reference planes, I'm just going to lock them up. The reason I use a rectangle is because the locks pop up. If I was to draw lines, do some lines here, the locks don't always automatically pop up where you want them to be, right? So you'd have to do it in between and you break your chain, but there we go. So this is actually going to be our shade, right? So we're revolving it around this center line. So if I click finish, you could see in 3D here, we have a revolve. And because we set up those reference planes already, if I go back to my front view, we set up these reference planes and these dimensions here. If I was to push and pull this, so if I said my shade radius was 4 inches, apply, you can see it bumps out to 4 inches. And we can go back down to 3 inches, it bumps to 3 inches. So again, we could have done an extrusion. So if I go into my reference plane, my reference level, if you did an extrusion, what you'd have to do, I'll just quickly draw an extrusion, is you would have to draw 2 circles, let's say, right? And do 1/2 inch. And then here we dimension a radius to the outside and to the inside. And then one of these would control. So let's say this was diameter. So let's go shade radius. Now this one has to be, if we said ½ inch, obviously it wouldn't work, right? Shade thickness. It would have to be shade radius minus shade thickness, and then it would have to be controlled by another one. Excuse me. So that's the reason why I decided to do an extrusion here. Because now we're not using any radial dimensions. I always like to avoid radial dimensions as much as possible. That's just me. You can feel free to use them all you want. Okay, so there we go. We've got that. Now what we want to do is we need a reference plane for our cable. And we're actually going to use, I feel like we should use the same reference planes for our support. I think maybe you'd want them to be separate. You want the support to stay the same and while the shade bumps out. I think that it would make sense if this went to like 7 inches or 8 inches in radius. Maybe the support wants to go to 7 or 8 inches in radius. So I'm going to use the same one for now, which is fine. And if we want, we can actually use a revolve real quick to actually create that. So I'm going to draw a reference plane. And I'm going to set this dimension to, no, let's do 1 inch. Let's do 1 inch there. Okay. Now, instead of dimensioning it, I could, if I wanted, I could bring out this temporary dimension. If you select the little teeny dimension you might be able to see there, it'll turn it into a real one. And then we can convert that or use DI on the keyboard or, dimension it by hole. I just wanted to show you that little tip. So I'm going to select this and I'm going to say add parameter. Again, I'm going to use a type parameter. And I'm going to say support depth, I guess. Yeah, there we go, support depth. Now I'm actually going to use revolve again, just because I'm in the mood to use revolves. So I'm going to use a revolve. I'm going to say axis line. I'm going to select, same as I did before, select the middle, make sure the lock is checked off on the axis command. Lock it up there. Then I'm going to select boundary line, rectangle, and do the exact same thing. So pop it from here to here. The only thing I would worry about here is it might automatically be selecting the reference plane or the face. So I'm actually not going to use that lock. I'm going to select these three. I'm going to use align on the keyboard. I'm going to tab around. And this is what that comment was before. I forgot who made it. If you tab to a reference plane that's named, it'll tell you right here that it's the what reference plane you're tabbing to. So this is unnamed, obviously, but I know it's a reference plane. It's the only one there, so I'm going to select it. And then I'm going to select my sketch, and I'm going to lock it. So there I'm actually locking to the reference plane. Then I'm going to click Finish. Now we have our support. And again, it's controlled by this shade radius. So if I zoom out, there you go. You got your support there. I guess here we could have done an extrusion just to the shade radius because there's no offset. But again, I'm in the mood for revolves, apparently. So now we're going to draw a reference plane that's going to represent our thickness, our cable. I just drew a reference plane there. Their cable wants to be ½ inch total, so it's going to be a 1/4 inch radius. I'm going to do the same thing here. You know what? Because I did so many revolves, let's do an extrusion for fun. So I'm going to delete that. So we're going to go back. We're going to go to the floor plan, and we're going to do an extrusion. And I'm going to go to Create Extrusion. And I'm not even going to bother with the reference plane because I'm actually going to keep it centered. So we're going to use a circle, keep it right in the middle, and we're going to go out 1/4 inch. So there we go. We've got our 1/4 inch. Now, usually the automatic sketch dimensions will keep this circle locked to the center here, but I always like to make sure. And by doing that, in order to do that, I select my circle, and I check the little box here that says Center Mark Visible and click Apply. So what that does is it gives you that X, which you probably haven't seen very often. And now you can actually align. So if I type AL on my keyboard, I can align to this reference plane and lock it. I can select this reference plane and lock it. And now you know that thing is not going anywhere. Now, last thing we're going to do is we're going to put a radius dimension in here. So here we go. I got a radius dimension of 1/4 inch. And I'm going to select that dimension and give it a parameter. We're going to say cable thickness, or maybe we'll say cable radius so we know it's a radius. There we go, and click Finish. Now I'll go back to my front view, and I'm just going to pull this cable, and I'm going to pull it up to where the supports are because that's where it's going to support it, and lock it. And I'm also going to pull it back to this reference plane, and I'm going to lock it to that reference plane. So by taking those pulls and moving them around, it allows you to lock to specific elements, which is pretty neat. So now you can see we're starting to get a light fixture going here. So we pretty much got it there except for the supports and some materials, right? And there's a couple little things that we're going to tweak later. So now we want to go and we want to make those supports, which is just a simple little X, right? They were across right in the middle here. So I'm going to set up some reference planes in floor plan because they're actually going to extend past our pendant a little bit. So if I go into my reference plane, I mean my reference level, which is the floor plan, I'm going to set up a couple things here. Let me type RP on my keyboard for reference plane. Or you know what? I want to go a half inch outside or 1.5 inches outside. So I'm going to start with this one. I'm going to select this reference plane. I'm going to copy it 1.5 inches. Okay. Then I'm going to select it. I'm going to type MM on my keyboard. I'm going to mirror it around. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm just going to draw a reference plane. So we'll extend that up. I'm going to move it up 1.5 inches so I know it's the same as the other one. Then I'm going to type MM on my keyboard, and I'm going to mirror it around. So now we've got this box that we created here. Let me just double check to make sure this question stuff is still good to go. Okay. So now we have this box here. So now we want this box to obviously be centered within our fixture. So we're going to dimension and make those EQs that we showed before. We're going to constrain it equal. So there we go. I'm going to EQ that. I'm going to EQ this. Now I'm going to use a dimension for the overall. And we're actually going to drive this dimension with a formula. You don't have to. There's other ways we could have done this. You know, we could just lock it to some other things here. But I think it's going to be a lot easier because we use that revolve technique to use a formula. And then you don't have to think about it later. And I also want to talk about some formulas here. So it's a good opportunity. So I'm going to select these two 10-inch dimensions. I'm going to click Add Parameters. And I'm going to call this Shade Support Length. I guess it's kind of long, but yeah, let's keep it like that. We'll keep it like that. Only because I did it in the example and I don't want to confuse myself. So there we go, Shade Support Length. Okay, so now we have to draw our shade supports, and then we have to set up some math. Any warning on over? Douglas is asking about any warning on over constraining families. I didn't get one yet. The warning would be just pay it, and I think maybe that even goes back to the reference naming and stuff. Typically, when you over constrain something, you don't even realize it, but you're double dimensioning or dimensioning to something else. That's what I found. So, for instance, if I was to dimension these two on this side and not even realize it, and then try and lock it, look what happens. Yeah, that's right. I forced that error. So that seems to be the typical, and you don't even realize you're doing it. Is when you double constrain something. You know, the same will happen in this direction. If you hit here and here, and you selected and went to, I don't know, shade support length, the same one. See, it's yelling at me. So more often than not, with me at least, and I bet it's the same with you guys, you're over dimensioning something that you don't even realize you're over dimensioning. Obviously, when you get more complex, there might be some other reasons, but I hope that was a somewhat of an answer for you, Doug. I mean, the fact that I just created it for you shows that it's definitely a common occurrence. So that's actually probably the most common error you're going to get. And I think that for me, it's usually over constraining by simply dimensioning the same thing multiple times. So let's just draw these supports real quick. So I'm not going to use revolves. I'm going to actually use extrusions. I'm going to go to Create Extrusion. I'm going to use a circle. And we already had this reference plane set up here for shade supports. So I'm going to use that. And I'm going to go, I don't know, do we go 1/2 inch? Yeah, it doesn't look too bad. I'm going to go 1/2 inch radius. And now here, if we want, we can do the same thing. We can hit center, make center visible, and we can apply it or align it. Same thing with the center. I'm going to tab to hit this reference plane. I'm going to align it. And we know that that's centered there. I'm going to click Finish. I'm going to go to my floor plan. And I'm going to pull this and lock it to what we just created. Pull and lock, pull and lock. Okay. And now going back to my high school geometry days, I know that if I mirror this, so I'm going to use DM on my keyboard, and I mirror this on a 45, it's going to pop it that way, which is pretty cool. And I'll just reselect it there. what I'm doing is I'm just pulling these little blue grips, and I'm going to hit the reference plane again so I know that it's locked around the horn. Good. And I'll double check to make sure this should have stayed constrained, but if I go to my left view, I want to double check to make sure this guy is constrained in the middle. So I go to Edit Extrusion and see if I pull it, it's not. I also forgot to set a dimension for that radius. So let me just align these. So let me just make sure I hit the reference plane, align the middle. I'm going to type DI on my keyboard. I'm going to use the radius. And I'm going to give this a new parameter called support radius. Now we have to make sure we give the front one the radius. We should have done, if we did that before we mirrored it, it actually would have stayed, which would have been nice. But I forgot to put that in there. So let's go to Edit Extrusion, DI on my keyboard, radial there, select it, and shade support radius. Where'd it go? Support radius. There we go. And finish. Okay. So now we go in 3D. You can see we're starting to get a light. And it's actually got those supports under there, which is pretty cool. It's got a support here. It's fully parametric, although we haven't flexed in a while. So let's check some flexing before we throw in some math and formulas. So if I grab this and I pull it, you can see it looks like it's working nicely, which is good. So that's pulling up and down. Let's see if I pull the shade radius up to 6 inches. Those didn't move. Well, sorry, the radius moved. You can see that bumped out, but the supports didn't move. So we have to set up that formula for the supports. But you can see the support work down here and the shade work. So now we just need to do this math. Let me undo this. We need to do the math to create the support lengths correctly, right? So what are the support lengths going to equal? So let me go into my formulas here, into my types, make some room. So the support lengths, we had 1.5 inches outside, right? We wanted 1.5 inches outside of the shade. So therefore, we're going to use a formula. Let me go shade support length. And we are going to say we want the fixture radius, right? That's going to be 3 inches plus the fixture thickness, right? Or the shade thickness, I think I called it. And then we're going to multiply that by 2, which will give us something, right? That's going to give us, oops, did I name that wrong? Shade radius. I named it something different. That's going to give us the right to the outside, right? Which is fine for now, but then we'll add the overhang. So shade radius. That's giving us 7 inches. So if I click apply, you can see it's nice and flush there. So then what I want to do is I want to drive it. So if I add a new parameter and I say shade support overhang, again, that's a long one, but that's okay. Shade support overhang. And we say 1.5 inches. We're going to add it to this. So shade radius plus shade thickness plus shade support overhang equals our 10 inches. And now if we change our shade support overhang to 2 inches, this bumps up to 11. So it might be a sort of long way to get to it. You can see it's flexing here and there, but it's a way where I can introduce some formulas to you, and also where you can use that revolve instead, but you can see it's working perfectly fine. So now when I change the shade radius to 4 inches, everything should bump up okay. See that? All bumped up perfectly fine. So kind of a cool way to introduce some formulas into your families. Now the last thing we want to add a formula for is this light source. So you notice the source is actually pretty big. The source symbol size is actually 2 feet. We actually want it to be the same as the radius, although I think this is a diameter. So let's go inside here, and I'll show you what I mean. Oops, there we go. So light source symbol size is 2 feet there. So I believe it's a diameter. So we're going to have to say shade radius times 2 and click apply. And you can see it's going to make it 6 inches, and it'll always be the same thickness as our shade. So if we bump up our shade, the light source bumps up with it, which is always pretty neat. So now we've got fully functioning. Let's double check a couple things here. This should move up and down. If I change my fixture height, let's change my fixture height. 6, click apply. There we go. That stayed center. Perfect. This shade support, let's check that. Shade supports 4 inches. Click apply. Perfect. So it's all flexing and pushing and pulling. The final thing, we got a question here. Do you need another parameter? Can't you just add 1.5 inches to the end of the formulas? Yes, Hangman, you can. The problem would be if you wanted to adjust that. So what Hangman's asking is, instead of doing a shade support overhang parameter, can't you just say shade radius plus shade thickness plus 1.5 inches times 2? And you most certainly can. But then to change it in the project environment, you can't. You'd have to go into the family, or you have to go into the formula to change that. So what I'm allowing you to do is change that in the project environment. So this will be given as an option, and I'll show you when I bring into the project environment. This will be grayed out. So I hope that helps. I think it did. Thanks for the question, Hangman. So let's add a couple little materials to this thing, and I'll show you the little tweak that I usually use, and you might have seen the tutorial before for making this light look really cool rendered, and then we'll bring it in and we'll render it while I talk a little bit more about volume 3. So I'm going to create the supports and the cable and the actual surface support. I'm going to create those as the same material. So I'm just going to select them right now. I'm selecting all of those together, and I'm going to give them a parameter. And I'm going to make it a type parameter. So I just selected the little browse over here and click add parameter. And we're going to say pendant steel or something like that. Support, I don't know, we can call it something, whatever. Type, and click OK. And now I'm also going to give the shade a material parameter. So I'm going to click add. I'm going to say pendant shade type. Okay. Now, seems to be a little debate between a lot of Revit users as far as whether you set up materials in the project environment or you set up materials in the family environment. A lot of people will say you leave this as just a parameter and then you do it in the project. I'm kind of indifferent. I really don't care. There's benefits to each. I'd say the one sort of downfall is that if you have something named the same, so if this is called stainless steel, you bring it into your project that has stainless steel, there's going to be an overwrite and you're going to have some issues, right? So if you want to have custom stuff, like you've probably seen Herman Miller and some of those companies, they have Herman Miller dash fabric, blah blah blah. Then that's your thing. I'm going to actually create them in the family and bring them in just because that's how I want to do it. You don't have to. Again, you're giving them the option to apply in the project. So I'm actually going to add them in here. And the reason I'm going to add them is because I'm going to paint a material to show the light being on. And I want to show that in here. So I'm going to duplicate, or I'm going to create a new material. So I know I'm not duplicating anything. I'm going to rename it pendant shade. Let's give it a little dark red and maybe a hint of transparency. And now in my appearance, I'm going to replace it with a default Autodesk asset. I'm going to search for glass, and I'm going to use a dark. There's like a dark red or something like that. Let's see. Yeah, there's a dark red. I'm going to start with that, and now I'm going to duplicate it. And you've probably seen the post of how I said you got to double duplicate your materials to not get headaches. Well, this is why. So this is called dark red. So no matter what you call this, even though it's called pendant shade, if you loaded it into your project and you didn't change the name of this, whatever your project's dark red settings are going to be applied. So by duplicating this, and if you want to rename it even, I can say in here, I can say pendant shade. Then you know that whatever you do in here is going to be okay in the project. Of course, until you reload it and you already have this material in the project. So sheets of glass, I don't know, I'm going to crank it up a little bit. Nah. What I want to do is I don't want to make it super clear. So I guess that's okay for now. We'll click apply. And so that's our pendant shade. Now we're going to do our pendant supports. And for this, I'm just going to use a default Revit asset. So I'm going to first create a material here. I'm going to say rename, and I'm going to call it pendant. And the reason I'm creating new is so that I'm not duplicating and getting those issues that we were talking about before. I'm going to rename it. I'm going to say pendant support. Now under appearance, I'm going to replace, and I'm going to look for stainless steel. And I'm just going to actually leave it because I don't care if I take the project's parameters. I'm fine with that because stainless is usually the same in my projects. Click OK and click apply. So now the final thing we need to do, you can see we got some nice materials applied there. First, I need to save it in case it crashes. The final thing we want to do is create paint on a material to show the light being on. And you've probably all run into this where you render something with a light fixture and it doesn't look like the light's on. Well, that's because it's not on as far as the material is concerned. You might be emitting light, but there's no light source. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Manage Materials. I'm going to create one more material. I'm going to rename it. I'm going to call it Light On Pendant, or if you want to call it Light On Generic, I usually like to use that, and then I can use it for other things. I'm going to go under Appearance, and I'm going to replace. And if you search for Light On, and you go under Glass, there's a little default material called Light Bulb On. You're going to select that. I'm going to leave it defaulted, although the one thing I usually like to do is no, I guess we'll leave it. We'll leave it clear for now. Usually I'll turn it. It's usually transparent. It is transparent. I'll actually turn off transparency a lot of times because you don't want to see through it. But for this case, we might want to see through it. So I just created the material, and what that allows me to do is under Modify, I can paint, and my material is not popping up here. Let's see. Remove. Oh, it was set to remove paint. Let's go to actually paint. And there we go. Now the materials pop up. Again, that's under Modify. And Geometry, you can paint. I'm going to select that material I just made. And hopefully you can see it. I'm going to select the inside of this cylinder. And notice how the inside of the cylinder is gray. That's because it has a different material than the outside. Let me save this, load it into my project, and place it sideways. Let's try that again. Here we go. Place it there. So now we've got this light fixture here. And there's our light fixture in the project environment. I actually probably should just do it in a new project because if I do a test rendering here, it's going to be pretty drastic. While that's going, do you guys have any further questions? It looks like there's not many right now, which is good. What do we got? 344. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to quickly just place this light in a box. I'm going to draw some walls here. Maybe I'll draw a ceiling. Oops, not sketch. Automatic. Go to ceiling. Mad at me. That's okay. I thought I had a question, but maybe not. Okay. Okay, so there's my ceiling I placed. I'll load that fun light fixture in that we just created. Happy hour fixture. Final light. Okay. Load this into the new project and place it on a face. Okay, David asked a question. Do you use the paint material often? If so, any cautions? I don't use it that often, especially in the family environment. There's a lot of funky things with painting materials in the family environment, because it's kind of like an instance parameter where you're kind of playing with voodoo there, like when you're painting walls and whatnot. You can basically, the biggest caution I have, whether you're in project or family environment, would be you can lose that paint, without realizing it, and then you're kind of screwed. So here it works because you're hitting geometry. I guess the real way, if you didn't want to use paint, we could draw another cylinder inside that and give it the material, and then you can actually control it. So there are other ways to work with it, but I should probably draw a floor in this. But I guess my biggest caution is that it's kind of like an instance parameter where if you change or modify the element, sometimes you will lose it. So that's my biggest caution, especially when you're doing it on walls and stuff. But so let's just go inside this view again, and then camera. We got our low light fixtures. I'm going to quickly set up a nice little medium rendering here. Let's go to low. Interior artificial only. And we're going to hit, we'll do this. Okay, I'm going to quickly render. So that was the tutorial I wanted to go over. I wanted to talk a little bit about BIM After Dark Volume 3 real quick. I wanted to sort of show you what's inside if you haven't looked at it yet or haven't purchased it or whatnot. There are 3 packages, just like all the other volumes. And look at that rendering go, pretty cool. So there's 3 packages. So I try to make it affordable for any budget. And inside each package, you'll get different things. In the videos, you'll get all the videos you see here, which can also be seen on Volume 3's website. There's a nice little contents that I put together. And then you'll also get sample files if you do Videos Plus. And then what I'm really excited about is in the complete package, you're actually going to get a few nice bonuses. And by a few, I mean a whole bunch of nice bonuses. So the case studies I'm really excited about. The Guggenheim, the Webb, and Shift City are all actual real world design projects, and they show some really cool techniques. And so what I did was inside each of these case studies, you'll not only get the actual Revit files that we used and final images, but you'll also get a little short video of me running down how we did it. So I show you, for instance, in the Guggenheim, if I open this project here, and I zoom in, you could see it's this funky shaped building, and it's made completely in Revit, rendered completely in Revit. I move through some of these images here. See all these angled walls. The big thing here is, I mean, look at these angled walls and different screens and everything. I show you exactly how we used the conceptual modeling, etc., to create it. So pretty excited about that. We also have the Little Details Counts ebook. If you guys haven't seen this ebook yet, it's 700. Let me open it up here. 769 pages written by Michael Anunuevo, and the forward was written by me, so you can read the forward if you'd like. But if you scroll through this thing, I mean, basically anything you ever wanted to know about family creation, you can flip through and check it out. It's an awesome book. Not only does he give you the book, he gives you US and metric version, but also inside here he gives all of the sample files, which are really cool. There's a pool table and some crazy shit that you probably never even knew you could build. And also there's a Revit furniture bonus. So RevitFurniture.com, Alex Gore, him and I are buddies. He makes some really tight furniture. He actually basically started his business by making furniture, Revit Furniture online. He got some really good clients, and that sort of helped him start his thing. And so he actually has a nice special offer here. So I won't open it now because there's some information inside it. But it's a special offer to get a giant bundle. It's like 500 families for a ridiculously discounted price. He also put 25 of his families in there so you can see what they're like. I see a couple questions coming in, so I'll get to that in a second. Finally, also, I think for tonight, for the last night, I'll throw in Aaron Mahler's naming components PDF. Those who don't know Aaron Mahler, he's the man when it comes to standardization and templates, etc. And so what he did is he actually extracted a piece of an ebook he's writing. If I pull it open here, I'll quickly scroll through it. And he basically shows his naming convention and why he does it. And he also created this awesome 5-page PDF where if you see in red there, those are his commentaries, kind of like the IBC with commentaries. And he explains in detail every aspect of his family management and naming conventions, which is kind of freaking neat. So we've got our rendering done here. You can see how cool this looks. Since you guys hung around, I wanted to make sure you get a little something special. So let me open this up here. Until the cart closes at midnight, you can use the offer code. It keeps going away. Offer code BAD HAPPY HOUR to save 15%. David Larson says, listen to Aaron. He's awesome. Yes, Aaron is awesome. I think I got another question in here somewhere. I've been asked to create a hanging pendant light for Slanted Ceiling so that the base plate against the ceiling. Oh man, I get this. I can't even tell you how many times I've got this question. Ricardo's saying some nice things about Volume 3. Thank you very much. Stefan is asking about a student version. There is a student version if you want. Oh, you're saying because I'm using Revit student version? Well, yeah, I'm using Revit student version. I am a teacher at University of Hartford, so I get to use student versions, which is fantastic. So let's go back to the question. I've been asked to create, but actually, sorry, since the student came up, there is an educational discount if you're a student out there, and even the video package might be out of your reach. Just shoot me an email and I'll hook you up with a offer code for the students, which is significantly reduced compared to retail. So what was I talking about? Oh, the pendant. So David was trying to create pendants. I actually just got this email this week on a slanted ceiling, and he was asking how would I go about that. And honestly, whether it's face based or ceiling based, it's pretty much a workaround. So if I go back in this family, I'll slant this ceiling here. Let's go. I think I'm just going to slant the ceiling, even though it's not. I know you're probably doing it on a roof or something, but I'm just going to slant the ceiling because we already have it modeled. And I'm going to make it 8 feet on one side and click finish. Okay. Now, if I go back to my 3D view, which I don't know where it went. Here we go. 3D view 1. You can see all this stuff is slanted, right? Which we don't want. If I cut a section through it or turn on my section box here, it's probably the easiest way to see it. Right? If I pull this back, there you go. That's not what you want, right? And whether you're using face-based or ceiling-based, you're probably going to run into something like that, which isn't fun, right? So the way I've gone around it is typically I will create well, I guess there's a couple ways. You can, when you're placing a face-based family, if I click create similar, you can place it on a work plane, right? So you can set up a reference plane. Tommy said, I'm not watching live anymore. It was a bit fast, but I learned a lot already. Yeah, sorry. I wanted to try and fit this into an hour, so I went a little fast, but it is recorded. And later on tonight, you will get an email with a link to see the recording. So definitely go back and check out some stuff if it was a little too fast. I know I went pretty fast here. So you'll notice you can actually place it on a work plane. So if you really wanted, you could set up a reference plane. So if I went into sections here, the problem again with this is that this is definitely where you want to name reference planes, but the problem would be that people can delete your reference plane. So if I type CS here, I say place on a work plane, I can pick this plane, go into my 3D view, and place it if it doesn't freak out. Just freaked out. Honestly, the way I do it is I will typically place a ceiling or an object that will be the same size as my mount, and I will use that. I know it sounds crazy, but honestly, it seems to work the absolute best. So if I basically sketched a ceiling here, and I drew a circle, and I know my mount is 6 inches, I'll just draw that there. Go in 3D, let's see. So you can see I have this circle here. I'll apply my light to that circle. I guess it wasn't 6 inches. Now I can actually control it by this. So again, it's not the greatest way. If you're going to do that, you might not want to go face-based. You can go with a work plane. But now you can sort of bury this in your ceiling or your roof or your wall, or maybe that becomes your junction box or something like that. So there's other ways to go about it. Because we use face-based, that's one of the issues you're going to run into. And if you had another option, let me know. I'd love to know. You can see it's looking for vertical faces and faces, but then it's also looking for work planes. So, the option could be a work plane, right? So if I said level 2 and click place, it's going out of zoom here. There we go. But now it's upside down, right? So there's a couple issues with that. But honestly, my biggest workaround, the way I've done it in the past is, I'd use a sacrificial element, maybe use it as a junction box or something like that to keep it straight. So hopefully you guys have any more questions. I don't know who's still got 113 people in here. Cool. I wonder how many people were in at the peak. Never even looked. Thanks for showing up, guys. Again, closes tonight at midnight. So make sure you get on. Download BIM After Dark Volume 3. Check it out. I definitely want you guys involved with the creation process here. Definitely, my feedback, again, surveys are going to go out. I think even with the surveys, I'm going to do some free t-shirt giveaways and stuff and have a really good time. So definitely be an insider and get in now. If there's no more questions, I guess I'll sign off. And I really, really, really want to thank you guys for showing up today. So I'll just give a couple minutes here if you want. Definitely, if you didn't check it out already, go check out the BIM After Dark Volume 3 promo video. I'm pretty pumped about it. The music's pretty cool too. And yeah, as usual, shoot me an email. Kendall said, couldn't you just use an incline reference plane? No, because then it would still be on an angle. But I see what you're saying. So yeah, I'll hang out for a little longer more. Thanks again, guys. All right. Looks like there's no more questions. So again, I'm going to sign off. Make sure you take advantage of this bad happy hour deal by midnight. Thanks a lot for coming, guys. I hope to hold more of these, and you guys rock. I'll see you later.